So let's jump in. Let's play. This is recorded only for you. This isn't to be shared. This is yours to do what you want with it.
Okay.
And well, let me ask you. You signed up for the session. What do you want to get out of this?
I would like to get kind of my clearer on my path and the language that I use for kind of my mission and purpose. It keeps getting clearer and clearer, but I'd like to really, I don't know, get it nailed. This is kind of how I think about it.
It will always be a work in progress, but we'll get some clarity on it today. I was just talking to a client who said, I don't really understand where I am at because I've got these two different worlds I live in. The nonprofit world I've been in for years, and I teach women around sexuality, and they're so far apart. And I said, well, I bet at some place they are totally connected. There's one thing that you do that you're doing all the time. She went, oh yeah, I'm in the world of transformation. And so I said, oh, it sounds like if you were introducing yourself to people, you would say, I'm an expert on transformation. And I was an expert in transformation in the world of nonprofits, but I'm also an expert in the world of transformation in the arena of women's sexuality. And she lit up. She went, oh my God, that's exactly who I am. Mm-hmm. So we can't see that for ourselves, but I could see it looked like these two divergent areas. And it's like, no, it comes from the same place. And so now she's able to say, I said, you could walk into a room full of educators and be asked to speak. And you could say, hey, I'm not an educator, but I'm an expert in the world of transformation. And what I understand is if you want to educate a group of children, then you have to understand what transformation means from the inside out. And she was like, oh my God, I could. And that's what we're going to play with you so that you've got this expertise that you understand in any situation you're in. Sound good?
Yeah, totally. Because that is my experience of it, is these two worlds that I've told you about. Prison work and tech, and that overlap. And I'm creating more and more in that overlap, but that's kind of where I play. Oh, you're on mute now, Rich.
Thanks. There was a helicopter flew overhead, so I'm muted. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, going to play, just see where we go.
Cool.
Some of them you've probably heard before, because I've done some of these. I did quite a number on the podcast. Did you listen to any of those?
I haven't listened to any of the branded sessions on the podcast.
Okay, cool. What did you love to do when you were 6 years old, Aaron?
Play sports, and I used to kick this soccer ball against the wall over and over again. So and I used to shoot basketball, many shots, hundreds of shots a day. So I had this idea of practice pretty early on. And yeah, I loved it. I loved preparing for big games and big events.
Were you a basketball player or a soccer player at some point?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I played soccer, basketball, volleyball, baseball, ultimate frisbee.
Mm-hmm. Soccer, basketball, volleyball. What else did you say?
Baseball.
Baseball.
And then ultimate frisbee in college and after.
Did you ever get into any particular level of team or anything any kind of tournament you were in?
For ultimate frisbee, I was actually professional for 1 year. So there's a pro league of ultimate, and I played on the San Francisco Dogfish.
Nice. My brother-in-law loves ultimate frisbee. He's played for years.
Where does he play? Because I remember you mentioning that.
Here in LA, they're always on the beach out here.
Okay, cool. So he plays beach. Does he play club or pro? Or
couldn't tell you. Don't know.
Yeah.
I'll ask now. I've got a new context for it. That's great.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? Where did you get this at 6 years old? I'm going to just keep going and going and going.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, what's common is I always wanted to be the best. And so I was just I'll just do it over and over again so that I'm ready in any game or situation.
Did you ever see that old movie, The Great Escape, Second World War movie, Steve McQueen?
I don't think so.
There's a scene in that they keep shoving him into the cooler, into prison on his own, solitary confinement, and he has a baseball or a tennis ball. He just baseball, I think, throwing at the wall, bounces back, catches it. Just it's the constant theme throughout the movie when he keeps getting put in solitary confinement.
Yeah.
It reminded me of that. Where'd you go to school?
I went to Penn in Philly.
And what did you study?
So I studied finance and marketing at the business school, the undergraduate business school there.
And why'd you study those two?
I mean, originally I wanted to make a lot of money, and I thought of myself as like a future CFO. So I kind of went down the finance path.
Yep. What happened?
I was good at math. I liked numbers. I liked calculus.
What did you like about numbers?
Something about the certainty or the definitiveness of them, the precision. Like I mean, school is a bit wonky the way it's set up, but I just liked that I could get the answer, and there was a way to get to the answer, and that was the answer definitively.
Yep. Cool. And what happened after you left Penn?
So then I went to Silicon Valley to do Accenture, which is a big consulting firm.
Yep.
And worked there for about 5 years, eventually navigating to where I really wanted to be, which was helping companies think through their strategies, especially with emerging technologies, which I've told you about before. Is like we would help companies partner with startups on AI, robotics, satellite imagery, kind of the exponential emerging technologies.
And what were you known for as a consultant? What could you be counted on for? What was your thing?
The main thing was, and this is true to this day, is I was a generalist, basically. Like I could just get anything done. So you just give me a challenge or a problem and I just get it done.
Have you read the book Range?
I have not. I've heard of it, but I have not.
It's a book about how important it is to be, not how important it is, about the benefits of being a generalist in a world where we've been taught for 50 years you have to be a specialist. So it might be worth you reading that if that's part of your expertise.
That sounds spot on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's called Range. I think it's David Epstein. I can't remember the author in this moment.
That sounds right.
Tell me a couple of headlines from your career. So a headline is something that might sound a little bit like bragging, but you know, when I worked on this team, this is something we accomplished. We worked with this AI and we created this new technology. We advised this company on this. What's a headline? And a headline usually has a number attached to it or something that has people go, wow. And so we tend not to share it much because it's in our past. Yeah, give me a couple.
Mm-hmm. There's a few. One is we created the whole system and process of open innovation in Accenture, which is now over 500,000 people worldwide. And so a small team of us like 6 to eventually 15 or so, was like a startup within Accenture that created this whole methodology.
And the methodology is called open innovation?
Open innovation.
And how many people are using it right now?
I would guess thousands, if not tens of thousands, maybe even 50,000 within Accenture.
What does it do, like in layman's terms? What does open innovation do?
In layman's terms, it's bridging the gap between, a company like Nike and a startup that does the most advanced sensors in the world, and kind of like figuring out strategically how they can use that technology.
So is it about taking high tech and knowing how to implement it? Is it those are the, okay.
Yeah.
Give me another headline.
The second one is specifically with a bank in Australia. So I don't even know what their revenue is. Many billions. We helped them with a strategy to use satellite imagery to monitor and track all of the loans that they make to farmers in Australia. So we had like a heat map of this area is red, there's going to be a drought, this area is green, there's going to be high growth here. And those small shifts in how they strategically did things using that technology, that I don't even know, but that could have led to hundreds of millions of dollars in increased revenue or even decreased expenses.
Yep. And again, what was your thing? Is it this overlap between high tech and implementation, or is it something else in the mix there?
Well, kind of going back to the generalist thing, is I would just figure out what needed to happen. So, we need to have a workshop with them. We need to have all of these things in place. We need to talk to this person. We need to talk to this person. We need to get this startup involved. I would just kind of piece it all together. And then the event itself, the workshop or whatever, would go really well often.
Are you visual? Do you see the images of the different pieces that need to be put together? Was it more linear? You knew what had to happen? Or was it visceral?
It's more visceral, like I feel it. And it's also visual. I see the different pieces that need to happen. And then I feel my way through what needs to shift, or who needs to be involved, or who needs to not be involved.
What was the movie? I think it might have been Will Smith, when he's got the TV screen is vertical and he's moving his stuff around with his hands, or was it Tom Cruise? I forget. You know the movie I'm talking about?
I think so. I remember you telling me about this before. It's when they have those people in like pods, and they see images, and then Tom Cruise like moves the images around.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name, but I know the
Look
movie.
that one up. And did I use this as an example with you before?
You did, yeah.
That's so funny.
It's spot on.
Yeah, just because it comes from you every time, so I didn't even remember it. It's clearly it's the story you give to me every time that has me go to that movie. So you got to look that one up, because at some point I want to be able to say, well, I want you to be able to say at some point, hey, you remember that movie with Tom Cruise when you see him literally taking these? I think he's reading people's future thoughts about.
That's crime. Right. That's right. Yeah. The crimes.
That's what I do. But I don't do it about future crimes. I do it on I feel strategy. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I feel strategy. Nice.
And the other phrase that's coming is like, I know, it's like a clairvoyance, which is exactly what that movie was about. It's like, I just know what needs to happen.
So clairvoyance is when you see into the future. Clairsentience is when you feel it.
Okay, good call. It's the latter, typically.
Yeah.
Although the first one a little bit.
So I'd look up clairsentience. You don't hear many people talk about that. We hear about clairvoyance, and it's usually about, I'm a bit of a skeptic on some of that stuff, where the people are trying to tell you your future. But it's worth looking at it because there'll be language in there that you can use and you use as an example. Hey, you might go to a clairvoyant to find out if your wife is cheating on you or if you're going to win the lottery with these numbers. So, but what I do is I literally see and feel into the future, but around one specific area, strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And then we create it. So it's not like I'm seeing like, oh, this thing doesn't exist yet. I see this thing that doesn't exist, and then I help you to create it. There's something in there playing with that language that's very interesting.
Yeah, that is my experience of it.
Nice.
And it's interesting, Rich, because do you know this distinction of visionary versus integrator?
Yeah.
So a lot of my clients are visionaries. And then I'm actually not a straight integrator. I'm a blend.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see a little bit of what they're seeing, and then I can help them integrate it. So I'm actually a blend. And there's typically like a COO who's like a straight integrator.
Do you do consulting work then as well as coaching?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, that book, Rocket Fuel, is a good book.
Mm-hmm.
And there aren't many integrators around. Lots of people are visionaries, but there aren't many integrators. And that you have the overlap of the two probably makes you even more unique. That's interesting. When you were 6 years old, did you see or feel the future?
Mm-hmm. In sports, especially.
Tell me
I
more.
often saw big games before they happen. And there's one in particular in basketball. It was the first game of the opening season when we kind of had this new team together. And I saw the vision of it for weeks leading up to it. And then it happened like roughly how I saw it.
Wow. And were you a big part of making it happen? Did you play a role in that?
Mm-hmm. Totally. That's key too, is like I see it, but then I'm often creating it as we go.
Well, do you know that quote, the best way to create the future, the best way to predict the future is to create it?
Yeah.
I've seen it attributed to a number of people like Peter Diamandis and somebody else. So, but I'd look that one up because it describes everything you've said.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I've got a great way to start this. In a minute, we'll start when I'm going to use the line, the best way to predict the future is to create it. I've been doing this since I was 6 years old. That's going to stop people in their tracks. Okay. When do you leave the world of Accenture and consulting? No, the question is when, roughly when?
That was end of 2016.
Great. And then what happened? What'd you do then?
So I'd essentially burned myself out, and there were other factors in there, deeper stuff, which we can go into if it's relevant.
Might be. Tell me. Give me a headline.
Like one headline was, I mean, it will shock people, is I got attacked and stabbed in the ghetto of San Francisco. And that trauma in my nervous system felt that it led to a lot of pain. And I'm still unraveling that and other traumas, but that was one that really had me like, it was hard to work because of the fight or flight, like stress response that kind of got locked into my body.
Was that in the tenderloin?
Yeah, exactly.
Have you ever met Christopher Maher from my community?
I think so. He deals with trauma specifically, right? He's a Navy SEAL.
Yeah, he's the former Navy SEAL who.
Yeah.
The guy. He should have had a picture of himself as a Navy SEAL on the front cover. I keep telling him that.
Yeah, agreed.
But Christopher has worked with me for 5 years, and I'm helping him to kind of create himself as a thought leader. But his vision is every Navy SEAL team has, I think, 6 to 10 people on it. Everyone has their specialism, and so you're in charge of first aid. You're the sniper, whatever. They can all do everything, but they have their one role. And what he wants to have, his vision is at some point, every SEAL team, there's one of the people trained in his modality, so that as soon as stress goes in after a stressful situation, they can take the stress out before they've even got back to base. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there's no more PTSD. There's stress and trauma, and then it's dealt with in the moment. Mm-hmm. So I've worked with Christopher. He works. It's really hard to explain what he does. Mm-hmm. But he literally, everything from physically walking on my body to, I mean, he was a former Navy SEAL, then he trained for the Olympics, and he spent 20 years studying Eastern and Western medicine. Mm-hmm. At some point, if you're looking at that, he might be an interesting person to talk to.
Okay. Yeah, totally.
One thing he does this 5-day process where you go morning and afternoon every day for 5 days physically, where he lives in Venice, to his place, and he'll do all physical stuff on you, and he does everything from spiritual to physical. Very powerful stuff.
Nice. Cool. Yeah.
And if it's not Christopher, he's quite expensive. If he's the right person for you, then so be it. I also work with one of his very top person, a woman called Gabrielle. Mm-hmm. She comes to my house. Christopher gets to go to him, but she comes to my house. She's here in LA, and she's cheaper than Christopher. So anyway, if there's either way.
Cool. Does she do them on Zoom or only in person?
I would have a conversation with her.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of it's physical. I had to help him because his old website they used to have, it's changed now. It's still not great, but he had a picture of him with one of those walking frames that old people have, because he uses that to support himself so he can walk on my back.
Got it.
He literally walks on your body to take out deep stress and trauma. He looked like he's an old man holding a walker. So, but yeah, so a lot of their stuff is physical, and you actually want to. But they do some stuff, I'm sure, over Zoom. I know he has clients internationally these days. So either or both of them, I can make a referral if you like.
Cool. Yeah.
All right. So you got burned out for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
Take time out.
So I quit. I declared 2017 my year of travel.
Yep.
And so I quit and bought a ticket to Bali. And I lived in Bali for like three months, and then had another accident. So we're
motorbike.
Not actually. Most people do. We were in the jungle. We're doing some men's work actually, and I leaned on a railing, and the railing just snapped. And so I and another guy, my buddy, tumbled 20 or 25 feet into the jungle. So I banged my head, and there was a scar, and I was like bleeding all over my face. But luckily I was okay. I mean, my friend's a doctor, and he checked my spine and everything was fine. And so I spent about a month recovering, and I had planned in Bali. I had planned to make my way through Cambodia and Vietnam and Laos and all that, but I felt safer just coming back to the US.
Yep.
So I came back to the US, cut that trip short. And that's when I started my coaching company. So that was 3 years ago.
Yep. 2018 now.
Actually, summer of 2017.
How hard was it to start a coaching company?
Really hard. Yeah. Because
And why coaching, not consulting? Why you've been a consultant for so many years? Why not just be a consultant?
I had, in my mind, I had done what I think a lot of people in your community do. I had eschewed my past.
Okay, yeah. Yep.
And was like, I'm doing this new thing.
And when did we meet? What was the year we first worked together?
In that fall of 2017 in London, because somebody gave me the prosperous coach, or they told me about it in my coaching training. And of course it hit everything, because they didn't teach people really how to create clients. So I signed up for that, and then I went to 5 intensives in a row, as you know, including Source Team and all that.
Yep.
And have built it up to a pretty good level. Like, I feel good about the people that I work with. But there's always more, of course.
Yeah. Oh, let me just open my door because it's closing. It's getting really hot in LA. So give me a second. Mm-hmm. And now, do you partner with somebody? I've got in my mind that you have a business with someone else. Is that right?
No, actually, it's only me.
Okay.
But I'm often with the CEO, kind of behind them. Mm-hmm. So that's the case with Compassion Prison Project.
Yep. So what's the business like? How much money do you make, give or take? How many clients do you have?
Last year I made about 84,000 in revenue among dozens of clients with one-on-one and groups.
Yep.
And some consulting.
And of the 84 that you took in, how much was expenses?
I spent 40 or 50.
Okay. And what did you spend it on?
On a lot of programs and coaching myself.
Yeah.
So, which is how I would have it. And I did that again this year.
Yeah. What's the dream scenario for the business?
The dream scenario is couple $100K with a lot of the clients making the kind of mission-driven social impact causes, prisons, affordable housing, clean energy, especially with the prison work, especially as formerly incarcerated people, returning citizens is what we often refer to them as.
Yeah.
Them starting businesses, redistributing power and wealth through my coaching and consulting. Yeah.
And there's an interesting way to think about this. We're going a bit off track from the purpose of this, but if you want to play for a few more minutes, the interesting part you have is you can work with a lot of mission-driven leaders and companies who won't have a lot of money to spend and give to you. Mm-hmm. So if you want to do that, you have to find a way to have a handful of people who pay a lot of money so that you can do both.
Mm-hmm. Right. Nice. Okay. I haven't really figured out the handful. So I've just have the...
So you have a lot.
I just have a lot of people paying me some amount of money.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me about prison work. When did you get into that? How did you get into that?
So a couple intensives ago, I had the idea because a client actually sent me the documentary The Work, which is about deep inner work specifically for men in that one,
Yeah.
in prison.
Yeah.
And it just lit me up kind of emotionally and compassionately. And I saw myself doing that work. And so I told you that, I think. And then you told Jackie, and then Jackie came over and talked to me about it. 'Cause she had just come back from maximum security prison. And that was with Fritzie Horstman, who Jackie then put me in touch with. So this was a couple years ago. And so Fritzie made an intro to somebody on the East Coast where I am. And I went into a prison in Boston and did this kind of work. And it was really great. It was really empowering.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think the original impetus, of course, was that incident in which I got stabbed. So not wanting,
Go on, finish that sentence.
just not wanting that to happen to other people, like trying to break that cycle of violence, essentially.
Yeah. But I bet it's healing for you in other ways as well, though, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And what do you see? What are these overlaps? There's the world of people who are incarcerated and the world of people who, in theory, are not. And where's the overlap? What do you see that most people don't see?
What I'm seeing now is the opportunities there, the benefits to both sides. So, people getting out, starting businesses, and people who have tech businesses like my client, Lucas, want to be involved in that work. It's healing for them in certain ways. It's connection. It's doing good in the world. They want to do it also. So it like really, I really see the benefit that for both sides.
What do you notice when you talk to people who are incarcerated about how they see the world compared to how your clients see the world?
Unfortunately, a lot of people incarcerated, like, they struggle to see opportunities and hope that they might get out and that they might be able to create a business and all that. And there's a lot of reality to that, the systems and the structures. So I don't want to downplay that at all.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. There's a lot of realities systemically. But that's what I experience, is getting them to hope and to dream big. That's a challenge. Whereas the tech people kind of often have that mindset, but they're on their side, they're almost oblivious to the challenges that the other folks have.
And where do they have a similar lens to how they see the world? What are they oblivious to? What do they struggle to see?
The incarcerated people?
Let me say it this way. I'm imagining that whilst if you're incarcerated because of the world you've grown up in, you have these kind of blinkers on you that opportunities is almost impossible to see from where you are. Mm-hmm. Now, some of that is systemic and due to all sorts of structural processes and so on. But if you're a CEO, you also have blinkers on in some way. Mm-hmm. You can't see things just because of the way you see the world. And I imagine that that's what you do for both groups of people. You help them to just expand the way they see the world.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, the CEOs, the tech people often there's a blind spot around like human emotions,
Yeah.
or the people that they manage or deal with or lead.
Yeah.
They often want to plow through people, and I'm often like helping shift it, and not that, because that doesn't actually work. They're just trying to like plow through people.
Yeah. You read Dan Pink's book, Drive?
Parts of that.
Yeah. But people miss the thing, the real drivers of motivation that they don't understand. It's like forcefulness will get you there.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a sentence stem, I forget if you've heard me say this before, that's very powerful for drawing out what you're about. Most people think ... The truth is ... I think we might have talked about this recently.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, for me, the one that comes quickly to mind, you know, most people think one day, hopefully I'll finally get rid of imposter syndrome. The truth is, if you don't have imposter syndrome any longer, you're no longer playing big enough.
Mm-hmm.
That really throws people because, oh, I thought I was supposed to get rid of it. Well, you mean I'm supposed to have it the rest of my life? Absolutely, if you want to play a big game. Is there one of those sentences that comes to mind for you?
The one that's coming to us, I have to play with the wording, but most people think there's like groups of people, and there's us versus them, or we got to do this to them. And I'm probably guilty of it even in this conversation. But the truth is that there's one human race, and we got to figure out what to do all together.
Let me try it in a different way. See if I get to it from a different angle. Most leaders think that there's this group is an extraordinary team, but this one struggles and that one's got problems, and if only this one was better. The truth is, if you don't see every single team that you lead as interconnected, you can never really thrive as an organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and especially there's often one person that a leader thinks is like the problem person. Especially with that person, that's like the most leverage to like work through things with that person.
Right. Most leaders have one person who seems to create the most struggle, the most chaos. What they fail to see is that that person can create the greatest leverage in their organization if only they knew how.
Mm-hmm. And or by having conversations with them, that opens things up, because they may even fire that person.
Mm-hmm.
But by going at it and having the conversation, that unlocks it.
Great. So this is just the start. Where you started was too generic about the world. It wasn't that it's not true, but people hear it, they don't know what to do with that. So I went straight into an organizational idea. And now we're getting somewhere with, most leaders think there's one person on their team who is a nightmare to deal with in every aspect, wish them away. But they're sometimes also afraid to even have a conversation with them. Mm-hmm. Truth is, if they can have a real, honest conversation with that person, it will shift almost everything in that organization.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Nice. So this is all recorded. You better capture this later and start to capture those. But start thinking, most people think ... The truth is ... You need 10 of those. Mm-hmm. You don't have to get 10 tomorrow, but start working on what are the 10 counterintuitive truths that I see. All right, let me play. Let me see if I can speak you into this room in this moment, and then we'll see where we go.
Cool.
I don't like your smile. It looks like there's a lot of pressure on me now. And so, I do this, we'll see what comes, but it might become part of the text of a website. It might kind of inform a book that you create. It might, I don't know where it will go, but underneath it all, it will give you the confidence. Oh yeah, this is who I am. This is what I've always done, who I've always been. And you can walk into any room with any leader, just this deep confidence inside of yourself. That's the purpose of this. And if it happens to be text for a website, that's awesome. But I'm not a branding expert trying to create that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Often it works, but it's really this deep inside out confidence that I'm working on right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get that.
Cool. Are you coming to the accelerator? Are you in the accelerator? I can't recall.
Yeah, right.
We're going to dive into this in all sorts of ways around how helping you become a thought leader. Yeah, more to come.
Cool.
All right. The best way to predict the future is to create it. I should know. I've been doing this since I was 6 years old. I've been driven to be the best I could be since I was a youngster. I played every sport you could imagine as a kid. But I have a vision of myself kicking a soccer ball against a wall over and over and over again, shooting hoops over and over and over again. I loved preparing. I saw big games before they even happened, and then I made them happen. I played soccer and basketball and volleyball and baseball and ultimate frisbee. I even became a pro, driven by this idea to be the best. So I went off to university to study finance and marketing because I love numbers. I love the certainty and precision that you can have, that mathematics gives you a definite answer. I became a consultant to one of the top firms in the country, the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the world. One of the top firms in the world. I worked in Silicon Valley. I got immersed in exponential technology. I was an expert at strategy in emerging tech, but I was also a generalist. I could be counted on to get anything done. Most people know me for working in a small team where we created the whole system and process of open innovation that's now been utilized by tens of thousands of people. I helped an Australian bank that already had multiple billion dollars of revenue use satellite imagery to monitor and track the farmers they were working with, that it helped them to increase their revenue by hundreds of millions of dollars. My expertise has always been bridging the gap between high tech and implementation. I might even say, Aaron, because I love the high tech versus high touch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking in this moment, because we didn't talk about it back then, but I wonder whether there's something around that, because I've talked about this for years. In a world where everyone's going to high tech, what has you stand out is high touch. And that's me. But what you have is, in a world where you're either an expert on high tech or high touch, I'm an expert on both.
Mm-hmm.
I've done that for years. I understand how to take exponential technologies and bridge the gap with high performing people.
Mm-hmm.
So that feels really good in this moment. We didn't talk about it, but it's coming to me. It feels really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's interesting about the way that I see strategy is that I feel it. I feel strategy. There's a movie with Tom Cruise called ... Look it up. Where Tom Cruise literally sees people about to create crimes and moves these images around on a screen like that. That's precisely how I create strategy. That's precisely how I help my clients to create the future. I work with high-level leaders to create a future that doesn't yet exist. The blend of high touch and high tech. I've been a consultant. I've been a coach. I've been a trusted advisor. You might even say some people call me a consultant, some people call me a coach, some people call me a trusted advisor. Yeah, that's good. Some people call me a consultant, some people call me a coach, some people call me a trusted advisor. But what all my clients do, it's almost there. Some people call me a consultant, some people call me a coach, some people call me a trusted advisor. But when people have an issue with high tech or high performing people, they just call me. Mm-hmm. When you say it written down, I think it will work. Some people call me and they just call me. It will work. I'm driven by two values, maybe three, we'll see. Number one, be the best you can be. Number two, never stop learning. And number three, make a difference. And I only work with clients who are driven by the same three values. Be the best you can be, never stop learning, and make a difference. I work with mission-driven leaders. What most people don't know about me is I spent years supporting incarcerated people and formerly incarcerated people. And what I've seen is that if you grow up in certain situations, whilst the system is sometimes against you, your view is also limited based on and based on how you see the world, you create the world. My experience of working with leaders at the very highest level in the world of exponential technology is there's no difference. That as successful a leader as you are, there's a way that you can't see what you can't see. And that's my expertise. I help the word doesn't quite work now because I don't want to duplicate what I've said, but I'll help you to see things that you cannot see. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's what I do with high level leaders. I help them to see things they cannot see. Most high tech leaders think that because they're so driven, if they only push their people enough, they can plow through anything. Mm-hmm. And in the world of technology, most people aren't that in touch with their emotions. But the truth is, human emotions count for more than anything in the world of high tech. And if you don't understand it as a leader, you're only working at 50% of your capacity, and so is your organization. Mm-hmm. I loved maths. You call it math. I loved math when I was 20 years old because of the certainty and precision it brought. You could get a definitive answer. Most people think humans are too complex. That's the one place there's no certainty and there's no precision and there's no definitive answer. The truth is, if you understand people, you can have absolute certainty and precision in motivation, in inspiration, in hiring and retention. You can generate millions of dollars if you work with. My clients have generated millions of dollars working with me because I understand the overlap between high tech and high touch. So I'm going to pause for a second because sometimes it comes through in a really clear thread. Mm-hmm. It didn't today. It was, I went back and forward a little bit. So it wasn't quite so linear as normal, but it feels very powerful. There's a lot of stuff in there that feels really good to say out loud. How did it land for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the pieces around, like I help, like they can't see it, the leaders can't see it and they try and plow through, but I help with the emotions. That is like spot on. That's like core to what I'm doing all the time. And I started to call that team dynamics. on my website. So I started to say, there's often, startups, there's strife, there's power struggles, there's silos. I help leaders work with those and have the uncomfortable conversations.
Find a word or phrase that becomes your own. Team dynamics is not, it's been, people use that phrase. It's nothing, it's too generic. What's the phrase that you see that, you don't have to have it right now, but start to think about what is that? What are the words I hear most often, and play with creating a word or a phrase around that.
Yeah, cool. That could be my whole thing, is like whatever.
Yeah, totally.
Comes out of that.
Totally. We're going to dive into this in the accelerator. What's your thing? What are you known for? Like that woman earlier who said, I do nonprofit work and I do sexuality work. No. You're an expert in transformation. She's like, oh, I am. So there's something here around, and I like this idea of high tech, high touch. I like that idea of the certainty and precision you had with numbers, and you can help them have certainty and precision with people. That's a very unusual thing for people to know. I'd never heard anyone say that before.
Yeah, I agree.
What did you say? Silos,
struggle? I got it from a Lencioni book, actually.
Yeah,
it
sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah, I think he calls it silos, conflict, and power struggles, or something like that. Or politics, silos, and power struggles.
What do you call it in a prison when, let's have a look what phrases they use in prison, or either the prisoners or the prison guards use when just look into that language there, because there might well be a phrase over there that everyone knows of that world that you can bring over here that they won't know. And it's like, I teach this concept. Here's why. It comes from this area over here.
Yeah, as you say that, there's some, we got to figure out the word. I'll sleep on it, but there's something about, I've told you about this before, is like, as a facilitator in the prison, the thing that will screw you up is the one person who's like angry or doesn't want to be there. There's like one leverage point. And I've thought about leverage as maybe something, but there's like one leverage point. And if you get that, you kind of like win the whole room, so to speak, because people trust you and it's safe and all of that.
Well, I mean, you could play with that. The single point of leverage. There's an interesting phrase. That can be a tool that you teach, is a principle that you talk about. At some point you'll have a number of principles. One of the principles I teach my clients, it's called the single point of leverage. In the prison system, whenever you're working with a group dynamic, there's one person, it's always one, who can mess everything up or bring everything together. Your job is to identify that single point of leverage, and everything will shift. That's what I do with my clients. Now, in the corporate world, sometimes that single point of leverage is an individual, and sometimes it's a process, and sometimes it's a system. But we've got to identify it. Single point of leverage. That's great. It's a nice phrase. It's interesting. I never heard anyone use that phrase before. So great. That's it.
That is spot on. And then another thing came, because there's solitary confinement in prison. And that is on that same wavelength of, it's essentially the worst possible thing. And I wonder what the solitary confinement is in an organization.
Oh, I can tell you immediately. It's the boss. You're in solitary confinement. You are surrounded by people who are saying yes to everything you say. They're trying to work out, what are you thinking, and say that thing before you've even thought it. They're trying to please you. You're in solitary confinement. It's the worst punishment ever in prison, and you're the highest level leader, and you're in solitary confinement.
Right. That's it.
Great. Now you've got two concepts that are unusual. Single point of leverage, solitary confinement.
Mm-hmm.
The Solitary Confinement of Leadership.
Mm-hmm.
These are chapters of a book, by the way.
Yeah, I'm feeling that.
Yeah. Solitary Confinement of Leadership, Single Point of Leverage.
Yeah.
Come up with 3 more counterintuitive phrases or ideas, and you got a book. I'll teach this in the next the accelerator, but this is one of my favorite books right now. How to Fight a Hydra.
Oh, cool.
Little book. It's tight. It's got 90 pages. Great little book. I created this 2-3 years ago. It's the book that I'm writing, but I was going to speak at EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, and one of my team said, well, instead of doing a handout, with some of the stuff you've written, why don't I turn it into a book for you? And so she did.
Oh, cool. I didn't even know you had that. Is that like out?
Yeah, if you Google my name and the Success Paradox, you'll actually find this because it's up online somewhere. The new book is most of this will be in the new book in different ways, but yeah, it's online somewhere. We never took it down. So, but you can create a tiny book. And I'm going to talk about tiny books at the intensive, the accelerator. Look, let me pause now because we're at time.
Okay.
Laura's going to send you the video, and also we'll get you a transcript to save you time as well.
Okay, great.
Cool. And you can check back in with me. You can feel free, write to me, send me a note or something. Anytime you like, just check in, send it to Laura, say, can you get this to Rich? If you've got a question or something you want to play with around this. Happy to help you.
Awesome.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks, Rich. Really
All right, my pleasure. See you soon.
All right, man.